Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to you lovely folks joining me here nice and early over at Marvel Snap Zone, and welcome back to Infinite Decks of the Week, the series where I normally walk you through a selection of deck lists that have made the Infinite rank this week with a variety of different play patterns and styles. Truth be told, this week has been a exceptionally weird one. The featured location of the Quantum Tunnel really put an emphasis on a very specific deck in the form of Lockjaw Thanos. Everyone with the ability to play that deck seems to have done so, really. And I don't think I've ever found as many reports of reaching Infinite with the same deck since we started this series. I mean, Zabu, of course, was super dominant, but it had several different archetypes attached to it, which gave the illusion of more diversity, I suppose. The other deck that we saw mentioned quite a lot this week was Shuri Zero, a metagame juggernaut in its own right, and a dominant archetype kind of featured prominently during the featured location as well. Alongside Lockjaw, these two decks have largely dominated the field of play, and they are undoubtedly the decks to beat right now. So, what do we do in this situation? Do we just talk about Lockjaw and Shuri in this series like I would do in the tier list, since both of those are tier 1 material right now, or do I focus on what this series is really about, trying to help fellow players reach the Infinite rank, and maybe find a way to abuse the fact the metagame is really about two decks right now? I'm alone in my living room while I'm recording this, so you don't really get a vote on that. If, however, you just clicked on this video to grab some lists to grind the ladder with, I'm going to show you an iteration of both of these two decks, and then we're going to spend some time breaking down how you can try and attack that existing metagame if you're currently looking to reach Infinite. If you do enjoy this type of video, do me a favour, make sure you leave a comment down below, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already to make sure that you aren't missing out on future Marvel Snap Zone content. Let's go take a look. Cue Thanos, Lockjaw, and Shuri Zero. The version of Shuri Zero we're choosing to showcase on screen here is the more readily accessible one without access to a card like Sauron, just for the sake of demonstrating what more players are currently playing thanks to that card's availability. But be rested assured, if you own Sauron, it's still very, very good in this deck. So, how do these two decks work? In order to try and counter a deck, first of all, we need to understand the basics of what they're trying to do, and both of these decks share very similar traits overall. Both are looking to get cards on board worth a gazillion points in stats. Both have a key card to their game plan that you need to be paying attention to in the form of Lockjaw and Shuri respectively. Both include a Sunspot plus She-Hulk package to give them the opportunity to pass on turn 5 and have a very explosive turn 6. With Doctor Doom appearing in the Shuri deck and Space Stone in the Lockjaw deck, both decks are capable of playing into unplayable locations, and both decks include the card Aero, one of the best cards in the game right now, and able to control either turn 5 or turn 6 if you let them have priority. As such, once they're ahead, these builds are able to control where the opponent is able to play their cards. So, how do we look to exploit that information moving forward? The most obvious of the bunch is Shang-Chi, and you may already notice this card is starting to make appearances just about everywhere. We mentioned both of these decks are looking to establish big points at some point during the game, and that makes Shang-Chi a better card against Shuri Zero, and a solid one at least against Lockjaw. The card isn't a magical answer though, it's not going to make all your problems go away, as you need to have priority for it to hit its intended targets thanks to Aero. Also, Shuri Zero often runs Armor and Cosmo in order to limit exactly how good Shang-Chi can be against them. Your other option is Valkyrie. Similar to Shang-Chi, Valkyrie is a good way to punish big power cards while giving some value to our cards in the process. This card is devastating for Shuri Zero as it forces Taskmaster to copy a 3 power card and ruin the entire game plan of that deck. It's weaker against Lockjaw though. That deck's lanes are much more likely to be full of stones, so you'll have to fill your lanes as well with the best value overall. Unless the opposing lane is full, Valkyrie would rather be played without priority, but that opens you up to an Aero counter once again. Overall, Shang-Chi seems like an easier card to utilize effectively for the majority of players. Iceman is a super interesting tech choice against both of these strategies. It's often hard to figure out if an extra energy would be annoying to Lockjaw because the card still remains powerful if it's played on turn 4, but against Shuri Zero, Iceman can be disastrous for the opponent if it can hit the Shuri or the Red Skull and completely derails their turn 4 and turn 5 curve, making it an accessible and powerful option against that deck. Unsurprisingly, Aero is great against both decks. It can move cards played behind Lockjaw to somewhere else, or it can have Red Skull and Taskmaster end up in the same location so they don't have to each win a lane by themselves. The big emphasis on Aero, of course, is that you need priority for this card to really shine, and without that, the cards played behind Lockjaw get cycled and Aero moves nothing, so do keep that one in mind as well. Also been looking at Spider-Man in this current metagame as a result. Instead of trying to move things around or destroy lane-winning cards, one can just try and lock down the lanes before the opponent can take advantage of them. With both decks potentially able to reach the lanes through Doctor Doom or the Space Stone though, Spider-Man doesn't guarantee you a win, but it will make planning your final turn much easier. It's a similar story for Professor X, arguably a riskier Spider-Man. Professor X will guarantee you a lane 1, but considering how explosive both decks can be on turn 5, Professor X probably requires you to play Daredevil to make sure that you aren't playing it somewhere that's going to lose you a lane instead. The card does seem to be a really nice counter to the pass on turn 5 and explode with She-Hulk pattern though, so I definitely think this one is worth exploring in the near future. Last but not least, I'd also like to give a quick shout out to Mr. Fantastic, a card that doesn't really make a great deal of sense as a tech choice against either deck, but it is one of the best cards in the game at seizing priority going into the second part of a match. For several cards on this list, having priority is crucial for them to work as intended, and in that regard, the ability to seize the initiative before those key turns is actually extremely important for decks looking to counter both Shuri Zero and Lockjaw Thanos. I understand this is a very different take on this video series than you're used to each and every week, but it really has been a weird one in terms of Shuri Zero and Thanos Lockjaw just overwhelmingly dominant in the amount of people making it to Infinite with those two decks. In this piece instead, we tried to open up some avenues regarding how to tackle both of those decks and discuss cards that are worthy of your consideration if you're looking to do so instead. Still, it seems like more players are looking to just pick these decks up rather than try and beat them consistently. Maybe once someone figures out how to do it, their dominance will start declining, but until then, I guess you're better to be prepared to face these two decks in order to punch your ticket to Infinite this season. If you've got any thoughts on this video, any thoughts on the article linked below, feel free to let us know what you're thinking in the comments section down below. But until next time, I have been HowlingMines, you've been amazing, and I've been Marvel Snapzone. Take care, have a good one.